Gary Danielson had something very interesting that he said during Georgia's win over Tennessee on Saturday. And here's what the quote was: I have a friend that watches Georgia practice a lot. He says you can't tell the difference. You can't tell the first string guys from the second and third string guys. And this is something that's not immediately happened. It's taken a little bit of time, but that's exactly right. When you go out there for pregame warmup or when you go to a practice at Georgia and you look around at the people who are playing, it's hard to tell the difference between, just for instance, uh, Jamari Sawyer and Broderick Jones. There's a difference between Jamari and Broderick, but it's hard to tell it. Like it's not obvious who the starter is. What about Xavier Truss? What about him? He's a backup. Does he look like a backup? No. Um, Obviously, the quarterbacks, they're all very gifted guys. Your running backs. I mean, if you looked at Kendall Milton, you wouldn't think that he would be a guy that's gotten, you know, a fourth of the snaps at Georgia this season because he just doesn't look that way. What about Munden and Sorey? I mean, Smile Munden looks like he should be playing right now. That's why when you talk with people around the league about Georgia and Alabama too, but when we talk to people around the league about Georgia and how they do so well at defense, really the formula is simple. It's hard to do, but it's simple. And what they do is they go out and recruit the absolute best player they can possibly get at the position that they're looking for. And I'll have a side note here. Chaz Chambliss is a very specific type of linebacker. He's not, what I mean is he's a pass rushing guy. That's why they got him. They got him for third down and long. He is going to be a very good pass rushing guy. He is not someone necessarily that's his specialty. They are at the point now where they can go out and get guys that really excel in this particular thing for their defense. And then step two step one is recruiting and recruiting at the highest level possible, and then sometimes going out and getting a particular type of recruit for a particular position. Step two is they put them in the system and everybody learns it. It doesn't change the nomenclature, the language doesn't change. They let them go out there and play fast. And when they're freshmen and sophomores, sometimes they're not expected to go out there and play. But by the time they do play, this is step three, Channing Tindall, their senior years, their junior years, they're flying around like crazy people because they totally know what they're doing. They know how to do it, and they don't have to think. They just go play. Did you see the trick play that Tennessee tried to pull on the Dogs? Where Lewis Cine dropped back. Okay, so Tennessee gets under center, and Lewis Cine's like, that's weird. There's something's going on here. And he gives himself a little bit more space, drops back. He should have picked the ball off, honestly. But Tennessee throws a double pass. Hooker throws it back to, I think it was receiver, I'm not sure. And the guy is, relatively open, but it doesn't fool Lewis Cine at all because these guys totally know what they're doing. They don't have to think about coverages or, if it's this and it's this. That's it. They know what they're doing. And when you don't have to do sort of exotic stuff and you just say, hey, these are the rules. This is basically what we're doing. You can check with me if you get confused. They don't get. When was the last time you saw that defense get confused? It doesn't happen very much. And then this week, you have the team kind of get dealt a blow with a flu. I'm calling it a flu. I don't know if it was flu or not. Some sort of virus. Um, and when you look out there and the offensive line, and this is going on memory, is Warren McClendon on the left. Left guard was Justin Schaefer, so older guy. Cedric Van Pran, redshirt freshman. Your right guard was Xavier Truss, who's a sophomore. Warren McClendon is a sophomore. Truss is a sophomore. Van Pran is a redshirt freshman. And then to the right of him was Broderick Jones, another redshirt freshman. Four of their starting players, or the guys that took up the bulk of the snaps, have multiple years of eligibility remaining. And that's if you can hold off some of the guys who are behind them in eligibility. You look at you look at the situation that Georgia's gotten themselves into with this team and the recruiting and so forth. I mean, Amarius Mims is going to be a starting lineman next year. The question is where. Is he going to be left tackle, right tackle? When Gary Danielson's friend is talking about you can't tell the difference, you would think Amarius Mims is a starter this season. And he's developing at his pace. We saw this at the end of last year when Broderick Jones was able to play against Carolina, was able to play against Missouri. These were important games for Georgia just to get the guys out there. And I was talking to somebody last night that I've been around the block with for a while, knows Georgia football really well. And he was saying, it's not like they don't have guys developing. They're developing in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. They're playing. I mean, Deuce Johnson already has a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. Small Munden's out there. Xavier Sori's out there. These guys have played. Chaz Chambliss is out there. He got held so bad in the third quarter or fourth quarter, whenever it was, because he was actually going to light up the quarterback. Obviously, A.D. Mitchell is a important part of this team. This is the 2021 class. I mean, these guys are already playing. So they're not starting. You don't want that. You've got one star already, Brock Bowers. We knew that. I mean, we knew that he was going to be a big deal. We didn't know he was going to be this big of a deal. But I'm telling you, Chaz Chambliss is like the poster child of what we're talking about here. Because if you go watch Chaz at Carrollton, I saw him, I know at least once. I think I saw him twice. I saw him when he was young, and I saw him when he was a senior. I saw him when he was a freshman when I went to go watch Kevin Swint play, I think is his last name. Went on to go play for Clemson, real big-bodied kid. And I was wondering who was number 32 is Chaz Chambliss. And I was like, well, this guy can really get to the quarterback. And it was his freshman year. They were playing Arabia Mountain in DeKalb County. I can't remember which stadium. And and Georgia probably saw the same thing I did, which was this guy can really attack the quarterback. We can teach him to do other stuff. We got to have him. He's our third down guy. They can recruit third down guys. I mean, they can recruit third down guys because they've got Nakobe just at linebacker. Tyndall, Walker, Beal is still around rushing the passer. You worry about MJ Sherman. Don't be worried about MJ Sherman. He's fine. He's going to get his. He sticks around, which I don't know that he's not. I shouldn't even say stuff like that because people take it the wrong way. That's not what I'm trying to say. If he's playing in the future at Georgia, he's going to be just fine. Because all these guys, it takes time now. There's so much in front of you that you've got to beat out. Unless you're really special like Jalen Carter, you're not going to get on the field when you've got Wyatt, Davis, Walker in front of you. Walthour is out there, Stackhouse. These are good players. Stackhouse, Carter. These are good players. They're going to be good players for them. I love Logue. I think he's going to be a guy that's vastly undervalued. But what happens is they slowly get them through the meat grinder. There's no speed. We're not watching them make mistakes. Most of their mistakes are happening in practice, and they're making the mistakes in games. It's late in games, and it doesn't matter. Who needs to get work? That's something that Kirby talks about all the time. And that's how you develop a program that doesn't just fall off a cliff like Clemson has. I mean, you have guys that are playing, and then they play their 2 or 3 years, and then they're gone. There's not going to be a lot. There's a few super seniors on this team, but there's not a lot of everybody comes through the system. They go through the system. There's a process, as they said at Alabama. There's a system at Georgia. There's a way to do things. There was a conversation I had with somebody at Georgia, I think in 2018. And the first year that Kirby was there, he did a lot of listening, a lot of talking, a lot of wondering about kind of what's the right way to do this? Well, I'm not talking about football specifically. I'm talking about anything. And then at the end of the 16 season, going into 17, he'd kind of made his mind up that this is the right way to do things. His mind probably was already made up, knowing him. But this is the right way to do things. There's like, you can't there's no quick way to do this. I remember his first press conference at Georgia. The issue was we're on the lines. I mean, they just weren't where they needed to be. And he knew that because he had just played Georgia about 2 months before that. It might have been 6 weeks before that. The guys that played on those lines were different types of linemen. They were agile compared to Georgia's guys now. And they were about, getting out and, that you could still run on with those guys. They were very good players. They just weren't the same type of guys now. Now, the defensive guys, no, they were not the same, I don't think. I don't think they would dispute that. But the issues were that they could not get where they wanted to go with the way Kirby wanted to play with the players that they had. And when you talked with former players, guys who had played in the NFL that season, they said, no, with the guys they have, no, they can't play that style. Boy, the next 3 years after that, they sure could. And they played that style ever since. They're going to beat you up. You're going to get beat up. And with what Gary Danielson's buddy said is exactly right. You can't tell the difference. It's hard to tell the difference. It's hard to know that Mims is not starting. It's hard to know that Stackhouse, Mitchell, and Logue for sure, those guys look like starting players. They look like starting players. They're just not. And then they go through the system and they go through the meat grinder. And then nobody really sees the meat being ground up. But that's what's happening. And then those guys go on and they have their careers. We'll see you over on the website.